All right, everyone. So today, what I'll be doing is I'll be ranking professions, jobs, careers, or whatever you want to call it, in the medieval age. Now, I've tried to do some historical research for some of these, but some of them are definitely also just my opinion. So let's just get into it. So the first profession we have is the humble farmer. And now I think the farmer is difficult to place. Just if we're going on what jobs most people worked, if you were born in the medieval age, you were probably a farmer. But, farming is hard, monotonous work. Typically you don't even own the land that you're farming on anyway. You're just farming on behalf of some lord or something. So not even any ownership. And then, what if the harvest fails? Uh, Even if you've done all you can in terms of praying to the gods for good weather and a bountiful harvest, it can always fail. And, in many ways, for most farmers, they're basically a glorified slave, right? It's really, it's what most people would probably be, but I think it's certainly also one of the worst. So I'm gonna start straight off by seeing D tier, just really, really bad. Now, the next thing we have here is a stonemason. Now, the stonemasons, I think, were really the construction workers of their day, the people putting in the primary work in terms of in the construction sector. And I think you probably have some chances to build some cool stuff, right? Maybe you get to work on a church at some point, something that would actually be interesting to you, something where you would might extent. Plus, I think there's probably a good chance for there being a pretty high skill ceiling here. Like maybe you get into like some sculpturing of the stone at a certain point, and at that point, again, maybe you could work on a church or something else, as opposed to just building small huts. And obviously, if there's a high skill ceiling and you develop that skill, there could also be some chances for some good pay. And that's another good one. You're probably jacked from doing all that work all day, depending on whether or not you can afford enough, fish or whatever protein source they would have at the time to get in your 1 pound per body weight. But I think this is actually a pretty decent profession. I don't think we're up here, but I think this is very much like a B profession. The next thing I have here, although the image is pretty shitty, is a weaver. Somebody who weaves clothes and other garments. And, everybody needs clothing. And if you're doing a lot of hard labor, which I think a lot of people were doing at the time with their jobs, then the clothing is also going to wear and tear over time. And so they need new clothing. And, just like with the stonemason, I think this is also one where there's probably quite a high skill ceiling. If you've been weaving clothing for a long time and you get really good at it, again, maybe there's some good chances for some good contracts. Maybe you could do some priest's clothes, or you could do maybe even some royal clothing or something, where there could be some pretty good, chance for some good pay. And, certainly in terms of the two jobs we've talked about before, farming and stonemason, this one is probably also one that's less physically taxing on your body. I mean, maybe there is some carpal tunnel syndrome at some point from weaving, I don't know, but certainly less taxing. And so I think for those reasons, this one is going to have to go into A tier. I think this is a solid profession. Now, the next one we have is a fisherman. And I have to say, I think this one is pretty good as well. You have a cozy job where you're out in nature, right? You're out catching fish, you're out seeing the good scenery. Protein is always sought after, I think. Unlike maybe bread or vegetables, protein, I think, is certainly harder to come across in the medieval age, right? If you have to get it from like a pig or something, those take a long time to raise and to feed, right? And fish is a good alternative source, right? So people are going to be wanting to get your products, and there's, everybody's got to eat every day. So, I mean, certainly, I think it should be easy to offload your product. And then again, I think it's just like the weaving job. It's just like the weaving job. It's probably not that intensive. It's not that physical on your body as being a farmer or being a stonemason. And so for those reasons, I think I have to give this one an A as well. I don't know. I just don't know if the demand for fish is quite enough to give it an S tier. But I'll go with A tier on this one. Now the next one we have is a tax collector, right? Because obviously they had taxes and whatnot to pay for the armies back in the old kingdoms. And this is basically like being the person issuing parking tickets, but just for the medieval age, I think. And you're always running around making people mad. They don't want to pay their taxes. I don't know, maybe you're even getting into a couple of fights with different people in this job, trying to do this. So really not good on that. Again, I think it has it going for it that it's not as taxing on your body physically, and maybe there's a certain prestige. I guess you're working for a lord or maybe even the king when you're doing this job. So I imagine there's some decent pay involved. So probably gonna have to go C tier on this one. Now the next one we have here is a blacksmith. Now if you're a blacksmith, just like the stonemason, you're almost certainly jacked. You're literally beating metals all day. And just like with some of the other ones, I think this is definitely one where it is a highly needed profession, but also one with a really, really high skill ceiling. Like if you're doing like some very intricate metal work for some like maybe some more delicate tools, that's definitely not something that just anybody can do. Like anybody can just be a farmer or anything like that. So, probably a good chance of keeping your job. It's probably also an interesting job, right? I mean, there's so many different things you could be doing or making, a good thing for that. And, probably I would say probably about a medium level of exertion. Probably still not as backbreaking as farming or stonemasonry, but certainly not as easy as maybe a tax collector or a weaver. But I mean, I think the things we talked about just before that just drive this one up so much that I think I'm going to have to go S tier on this one. A really S tier job. Now, the next one is being a soldier. And this one is an interesting profession, right? Because you get to see the world, you get to travel around, probably make some good friends when you're in the army. But obviously highly dangerous. Not a good long-term outlook for your career. I mean, if you manage to stay alive, there's probably some pretty prestigious jobs with good pay at the top. But certainly, I would say a dangerous job. Also, just hard work, and I think at the bottom there's also bad pay. And again, you're probably not making it out on the bottom. You're probably dying before that. So not good. I definitely have to go D tier on this one. Now, the next one we have is a painter. Now, painter, is an interesting profession, and in many ways, being a painter in the medieval days and being a painter now, I think, hasn't really changed. You're probably going to have some unemployment issues, and it's probably going to be hard to find new jobs. Now, I think if you do get a really good job, like you do get a job at the king or some powerful lord, maybe painting personal portraits or battlefield portraits, I think there could probably be a decent amount of money in it. But, definitely very unstable, very, very hard, not physically taxing at least. I think I'm going to have to go S tier on this one, and pretty risky. Now, next one is a priest. And, a priest, I think there's many good things about it. You have everybody's respect, right? Because you can just say that they're going to hell if they are trying to oppose you. And that's pretty powerful. I think there's also pretty good chances of building up wealth through the church. They own the land around the church. They have sort of local influence. You can, do sort of tax drives type of things, trying to get extra money. There's no physical stress in being a priest. That's really good. Now, the one pretty bad thing, I think, is that you can't have sex. Although, maybe you still can, but you just can't be caught having sex. Which, certainly adds an extra layer of intrigue and something you have to think about. I think if you're caught having sex as a priest, that's a big problem. But But besides that, I think overall a good profession. A tier, I would say. Now, this next one is being a tavern keeper. And being a tavern keeper, probably an interesting job. Probably get to meet a lot of people, talk to a lot of different personas, traveling from all over, wherever it is you're situated. But obviously, there's also a chance that you meet some people that are interesting in all the wrong ways. Maybe you meet some troublemakers, some people you don't want. And so definitely a risk there as well. I think this is very average. And then the next one here is a miller. Now, a miller is somebody who runs a mill and is doing, grinding up wheat for bread making and so on. And this just sounds mind-numbing as hell. And, at least you probably don't have any employment issues because there's always going to be wheat to mill, you have to think. And it probably isn't even all that, I guess, stressing on you physically, although it might be, again, pretty boring. I think this one is a C tier. And then the final one, and one I think is pretty interesting, is being a king. And this is a very ambivalent one that I think you definitely have to weigh the pros and the cons. You're very powerful. You live a luxurious life. You have it better than just about anyone else. But then I think the big problem is that you're going to be dealing with a lot of plots and a lot of rivals. When I'm thinking back through the different kings and whatnot I know from history, there's certainly some of them that live very long and prosperous lives and then die peacefully in their bed at an old age. But I think that's not really the norm. I think a lot of them end up being killed in some battle or being stabbed in their toilet or die being poisoned by their wife or their son or, any number of terrible things. And so, I think you should probably expect your life expectancy to be lower and in general to be more paranoid. But, maybe it's worth it to make that trade for the years that you are alive to be very luxurious and good. And so, I think I'm placing this as A tier. Definitely powerful, definitely good, but not S tier, as I think some people would mistakenly, put it there. They haven't really considered the bad things. But that's just about it. Yeah, that's the list. If you thought this was interesting, then please leave a comment. If there's any of these takes that are just absolute trash, and maybe I will take that into consideration.